What are some of the more horrifying implications of the Harry Potter universe? Story 1. They have one prison where they torment their inmates. A wizard with a few confundus charms could infiltrate a nuclear facility and launch a nuke. A metamorph magus could indefinitely impersonate a world leader. Nicholas Flamel could wreak havoc on the world's economy by flooding the market with gold. A wizard could charm a person's home and never tell them the secret. Such a charm could hide terrorists and criminals from justice. A wizard could apparatus into Fort Knox or the Bank of London, put featherweight charms on all the gold, put all the gold into a bag with expansion charms, and apparate out. A wizard could rob muggles blind, then memory charm them to forget what happened. A muggle subjected to the Imperius could be forced to withdraw their life savings from the bank and take out multiple loans. Story 2. I was actually just thinking about this while I was watching the marathon on ABC Family. There are regulations for the weirdest, most pointless things in the HP wizarding world. Underage wizards can't do any magic whatsoever outside of school, at the fear of being expelled. Yet polyjuice and love potions can be made by anyone, with the Ministry of Magic having no knowledge of it, as well as other spells that control free will, like Petrificus Totalis or Stupefy. Could you imagine if someone stunned you, then just left you there and started imitating you for the rest of your life? Like, what happened to Mad Eye Moody? If the Ministry can detect when an underage wizard does magic, don't you think they could get some sort of pop-up Facebook alert when someone is committing identity theft? Or at least better regulations on that kind of stuff. Story 3. That the wizarding world is a civilization undergoing a serious decline and collapse, much like many other civilizations throughout history. Bear with me for a moment. Sure, magic seems like a really cool and convenient and powerful tool compared to current muggle technology, but a close examination shows us that wizard society has been in a death spiral of stagnation for centuries. With a few exceptions, almost all of the powerful artifacts in this series were made by wizards in the distant past and are only dimly understood by wizards of the present, much like how people in the Dark Ages would marvel at the aqueducts constructed by the Romans. At the time of the HP series, there is very little large-scale innovation or industry going on in the wizard community. There are no industrial laboratories trying to develop new spells or potions. Some individuals might show some innovative spirit, like Fred and George coming up with their joke shop items or Snape's notes in his potions textbook. But one gets the sense that almost everything in the wizard world is made on a very small scale by artisans, and nothing is ever standardized or mass-produced. The various communities of the series also seem very isolated from each other, with little interaction between them. Wizarding communities in other countries, as near to Britain as continental Europe, are seen as extremely foreign, exotic places about which very little seems to be known. The wizards of Britain are also governed by a bloated, ineffective, possibly totalitarian, and apparently corrupt bureaucracy. Nobody ever mentions elections in the series, and it's clear that ministry officials can pretty much act with total impunity. Story 4. I find it very difficult to believe that Tom Riddle was the only person to ever come up with Horcrux soul manipulation. I would think that many like-minded psychotic serial killer types would be terrorizing the wizarding world with immortal souls trapped in objects sunk to the bottom of the ocean. Tom was silly, creating clever puzzles and riddles to destroy his everlasting souls? A more sinister wizard would split once and bury that crap 250 feet below a tree. Good luck finding that Horcrux hair. Story 5. These jerks have tremendous brains, but are babbling idiots. I just watched the first movie again. Ollivander is like, I remember every wand I've ever sold to anyone. Yet, the wizards don't have a clue about crap like childhood safety and are completely out of touch with the muggle world, even if they literally have to go into it in order to get to their wizarding platform. They see electronic bus systems prior to getting on their ancient magic train. But yet the wizards don't give a crap about learning about the world around them. They just care about magic and potions. There didn't seem to be a person who was an expert on how magic worked or why it needed to be studied. They're just like, screw it, guys. We're magical. Life is good. They could have had magical electrical systems throughout Hogwarts, rather than enchanting some stupid stairs to make life inconvenient for no reason whatsoever. Weasley's also made no sense. Their dad is the expert on muggle crap, yet they're poor as dirt. If you know magic and interact with muggles, you could easily be the richest person in the muggle world. Why would you still want to be the poorest wizard instead? Story 6. That their world is dying. Think about it. All of the great magicians are dead and ancient. Time turners? Nobody knows how to make those anymore. A powerful magic whose methods have been lost to time. The Deathly Hallows, three items that turn well-known laws of even magical physics on their heads, cannot be recreated using modern means. The three brothers were probably intelligent and powerful to create them. Yet modern wizards find the idea so outlandish, they consider them a fairy tale. There are even old magics like the Arch and the Ministry that nobody even knows what they are anymore, what purpose they may have served. The pure bloodlines are crumbling, falling back on old money and old blood to prop up their nobility. The segregation and racism deepen the gulfs and serve only to ensure that their world sinks deeper into disrepair. Wars flicker off and on, magic guarded jealously. And even among magical people, there are those born without the spark, squibs. Certainly there are powerful wizards. Dumbledore was put forward as an example of such, but bear in mind that he also used the Elder Wand, and still was no match for Voldemort. The creator of the Sorcerer's Stone, Nicholas Flamel, opted to let the secret of its creation die with him. And maybe it's that mentality of wizards to jealously guard their secrets that has led to a world that is slowly dying around them. Story 7. I reread the series lately, and it freaked me out that after a while of trying to rationalize stuff, none of what J.K. Rowling writes in the books can make sense to Muggles, which is why she wrote it that way. Her audience are Muggles. I reached that realization while going through the 6th book, and Slughorn asks for the theory of creating antidotes for multiple ingredient poison. Hermione rattles off the law. The antidote for a blended poison will be equal to more than the sum of the antidotes for each of the separate components. Golpalot's third law. I said, what? How in the bloody hell are you supposed to figure out how much is the right amount then? After arguing all the points of the previous books, I reached a standstill. Story 8. You can vanish and create living things to and from the void. I'm re-listening to Order of the Phoenix at work, and they are vanishing mice and kittens. To where? To nothing, which is to say, everything. So basically, they are taught to murder kittens by obliterating their atoms into the universe. And in HBP, Hermione summons live birds. Are these birds as alive as real naturally born birds? Or are they like robots or AI, clones? Where did they get these kittens? Were they created from the void only to be banished into nothingness again? Story 9. Perhaps not horrifying, but certainly disturbing, is an apparent lack of interest by the authorities in determining the guilt and innocence of parties using either Tim Tuners or truth potions. Why is Sirius Black in prison? He betrayed the Potters and murdered Peter Pettigrew? Well, after having used the strongest truth potion in the world, we've discovered he claims to have not been their secret keeper. And having seen the crime scene with our own eyes as it happened, we discovered Pettigrew escaped. When Hagrid was first accused of opening the Chamber of Secrets, why did no one use truth potions to discover any evidence of his guilt? Or use the time turner to go back to the place of the attack and witness exactly what happened on that day at that time? When Hagrid is accused a second time, why is his guilt never confirmed with a confession via truth serum? When Harry Potter's name magically appears in the Goblet of Fire, why did no one go back to the night where it occurred and witness who put it in? Why, when Harry Potter returns from an unplanned teleport dragging a dead body, does no one give him truth serum to discover what actually happened before going back to the graveyard and witnessing Wormtongue's preparations? And while we're at it, why aren't new teachers at the school forced to answer some questions about their lives when they start? The first guy literally had the embodiment of evil attached to the back of his head. Easily exposed by truth serum's second guy was a massive fraud. Easily exposed by truth serum fourth guy was an imposter. Easily exposed by truth serum, and the one character they actually use it on in the end, it's a shocking oversight on the part of all parties involved, and leads to several innocent named characters being thrown into prison, huge amounts of child endangerment, the unimpeded return of the Dark Lord, and a major war involving most magical species, all because no one ever bothers to fact-check what's going on around them. Story 10. Their economy is really weird. Almost everyone who works does so in either government, retail, or the media, with a few people working as teachers. Magic has meant there just aren't many jobs for wizards to actually do. It appears to have some knock-on effects, because there doesn't seem to be much by way of social mobility. The Weasleys are shown to be dirt poor, despite being a family of smart and talented wizards. Meanwhile, you have old money families like the Malfoys and the Blacks, who are incredibly rich and prone to corruption and prejudice, all of which is facilitated by an opaque and undemocratic government. On top of that, magic has paradoxically left wizards behind humans technologically. I know the series is set in the 90s, but while Hermione is having to look up everything physically in the library, the internet and computer based information was permeating the homes and educational institutions in the real world. Similarly, their best form of entertainment seems to be the radio, while in the Muggle world, households had televisions, games consoles, and personal computers. It's easy to skate over in books or films, but what about the reality of hours of boredom that these kids would face? There's also communication where they had litters by owl and fireplace, maybe a Patronus if you were talented enough. When people had early mobile phones and email. Story 11. The fact that no one else in the world helped out with Voldemort. I mean, we know from Goblet of Fire that there are other wizarding schools. We know from Charlie Weasley that wizards live all over the world. Yet when Big Bad Voldy comes around, who the hell is fighting him? British wizards and also Fleur Delacour, who married into a British family. Like, what the hell? I refuse to believe that American wizards wouldn't hustle their asses over to meddle in the Voldemort business. Story 12. Okay, let's take the banking system. Does nobody think that there's a problem with leaving a big part of the wizarding economy in the hands of goblins, whom wizards have marginalized in society, previously mistreated, and at least twice, according to Binns, made war on? What if one day the goblins just said F this and decided to screw up Gringotts? The wizarding world would be screwed. Also, they still use the gold standard. Who the hell uses the gold standard? And if this happened, the wizarding world would be able to do nothing about it because they don't even learn bloody arithmetic, let alone economics, accountancy, or anything that it takes to become a banker. They're relying on the natural instinct of goblins for numbers to do the job for them. Never mind, you say. We'll just get people to make sure that we become really good friends with the goblins. Except nobody in the wizarding world has ever studied international relations, politics, or diplomacy. Would they be able to drive a hard bargain in the reasoning? And goblins have magic too, so it's not as easy as imperiousing on a lot of them. So the best option seems to be to send a bunch of wizards to LSC or Oxbridge to learn how to run an economy, because there is no way they are figuring out with sheer smarts in a short period of time what Muggles spent hundreds of years studying and still haven't gotten close to fully understanding. But there are several problems along the way. First, to get into uni, you need to take some form of standardized test. What the hell are spawns? It's like applying to uni with the ability to juggle really, really well. Well done, we don't give a crap. Hogwarts, the only wizarding school in the UK, doesn't teach crap about anything that might come up in an entrance exam. Story 13. There is some serious conspiracy crap going on in the Harry Potter universe. How does a society outnumbered by a margin of 1,000 to 1 not know anything about the society they are hiding in? Wizards don't know how muggles dress. They don't know anything about muggle weapons or muggle technology in general. How is it that only two underpaid, overworked men compose the entire ministry's concern with muggles? The ministry, as far as I can tell, has the primary duties of A, keeping Wizarding Society secret, and B, keeping the wizards from getting too bored. Seriously, who makes a teenager have to fight a dragon with a magically binding contract? They seriously couldn't have written in a contestants can bow out whenever they feel like clause. The currency system seems designed from the ground up to be absolutely confusing, and it isn't at all compatible with Muggle money, which for some reason no wizard understands despite it being significantly more simple. Compounding that, the whole banking system is run by one race of tiny, greedy, hateful monsters who everyone hates. It all just smacks of a system designed to keep wizards happy, complacent, and ignorant to me, which is why one charismatic psychotic was able to do as much as he did. But I'm getting ahead of myself. Everyone in the wizard community seems to assume that everyone, muggle born to full blood wizard, will be loyal to the wizard community, and it's never really answered why. And I have absolutely no good answer for this. I've yet to hear one. The muggles, at least at high levels, are aware of the wizarding community. I cannot believe for a single moment that the government wouldn't immediately start trying to gather as much information as possible on wizards from the moment they learned of them. I would even say that they would recruit wizards, most likely muggle-born, but a big enough payoff would get some wizard in their pocket. Story 14. The economy and what defines poor in the wizarding world makes no sense. Ron's family is poor and they have a house that is literally falling apart and doesn't have enough space for everyone to sleep in, when you can add charms to rooms to make them bigger on the inside. I get that maybe it's kind of hard to do and maybe it doesn't last forever, but wouldn't applying it on a weekly basis make tons of sense? When the whole family's home, at least. The tent that they use is huge and it's supposed to be a really crappy one. So it can't be that hard. Ron's dad even uses it on the car at one point. Even if you didn't want to do this for some reason, then just add the extra rooms on yourself. You can conjure materials into existence for God's sake. Things like wood, tiles, insulation, bricks, furniture. You could add extra room to your house like this for free. So why the hell wouldn't everyone do this? They already hint that the house is held together by magic anyway, and they have plenty of land. If you got good at it, I don't see why you couldn't simply build more rooms every time someone wants to stay, then just get rid of it once they leave. The books do seem to make out that there is a lot of skill involved in this spell, and most people can only conjure simple things. An example being that even McGonagall makes a fairly simple chair, and Dumbledore is the only one that makes a really fancy one. But why the hell couldn't you just conjure a chair leg, then another, then the back, etc., in order to make more complicated stuff but simply take more time? Surely taking a few minutes or hours is worth it to get all of your stuff for free. Clothes also fall under the same category. Can't afford them. Just make them yourself. Story 15. That body immobilizing spell is taught to preteens, and yet in principle, that very spell entirely hinges on removing someone's bodily autonomy. The number of times this spell could be used with good intentions are far, far outweighed by unethical, if not downright criminal intentions. Apparently, the wizarding community condemns forcing people to do things against their will, considering one of the unforgivable spells is just about that. But removing someone's bodily autonomy? Just fine. Keep in mind there is an entirely different spell for moving bodies, leaving Petrificus Totalus's use limited to what? Controlling thrashing panicking people. Could you safely use it on someone having a seizure? If so, why is this taught to children? According to the Harry Potter wiki, it's used by inexperienced duelists. Great. Any jerk could use it. Instead, the spell just ends up being nefarious. Want to mug someone? How about abusing someone? No problem. You've known just the spell since you were a child. Hey, why not immobilize someone? Leave them somewhere they won't be found and leave them to die slowly and painfully of starvation, dehydration. Great. You don't even have to be violent to cause someone severe harm. Story 16. As an astronomer, the one that always fascinated me in some sense is how they study astronomy for 7 years at Hogwarts, to the point of discussing a lot of the scientific discoveries in recent decades in the field. For example, at one point, Hermione corrects an essay Ron writes about Jupiter's moons, saying, "No, Europa is not covered with mice, but with ice," as he must have heard the professor wrong. On the one hand, it's a cute joke. On the other hand, what the hell are these kids learning in school if they think a mouse-covered moon is a reasonable thing? Now I suspect astronomy was thrown into the Harry Potter school system as a reference to astrology, which in divination class later on J.K. Rowling thankfully debunks as bogus, even in the magical realm. But then it begs the question what they're doing in astronomy class at Hogwarts. I have thought about this more than I'm willing to admit, as most of astronomy these days is physics-based. And if magic really depends on precise positions and the like, they could just use the databases and surveys us Muggle astronomers use, such as the Sloan Digital Sky Survey. And at the end of the day, mind, if the wizards aren't teaching physics or logic, they are really crap astronomers compared to the Muggle ones. Story 17. If snakes can be talked to and reply, does this mean they're sapient beings? In this case, are snakes the only animal that this applies to, or could every animal be sapient if you could only speak to them? If so, then we've been committing mass genocide on every since animal that exists on Earth, wiping some out, enslaving others, and eating many. Imagine what this means for things like cows or pigs, raised on a farm knowing that they will be eaten sooner or later, and that the ones doing this to them don't even acknowledge their screams. Story 18. The wizarding world is the fantasy equivalent for Australia. Everything is trying to kill you. Forget the magical creatures. In HP, they pretty much roam free, if watched. So a muggle could just as easily be eaten by a wild dragon as a wizard. In fact, being a wizard ups your chances of survival in that scenario. No, I'm talking about actually slinging spells. To get to work, you either A, fly a non-heated broomstick above the clouds, without a parachute, or B, teleport, with the very real risk of leaving bits of yourself behind. In 70 years of driving cars, we've invented airbags, crumple zones, and seat belts, not to mention individualized climate zones, heated leather seats, and a DVD player in the dashboard. In 100 years of flying, teleporting, they've invented nothing to make them safer. Then there's the other wizards around you. Everyone, at all times, is armed with a potential death dealer, whether they're school teachers or wizard cops. Sure, Mrs. Weasley mostly uses hers to chop potatoes, but when she gets pissed off, people die. Imagine a wizard snapping in a crowded area. Actually, you don't, because we saw what happened when Pettigrew blew up that street after being confronted by Sirius. Story 19. Students are never taught even the most basic first aid spells for healing cuts, burns, broken bones, choking, etc. Slughorn utilized anapneo to stop a student from choking, and Harry got the Episky spell from a fellow student. Harry even brings it up in the last book that his total lack of medical knowledge was a serious hole in his education. Also, why didn't they try calling Creature after they left the ministry in that book? I know they were concerned about Death Eaters in Grimold Place, but they could have simply put on the invisibility cloak and prepare themselves to stun anyone that came along with him. They could have also tried Dobby, which I was truly shocked they ignored. The whole camping trip portion of the novel would have been cake if they had Dobby smuggling them food. Another point, even if the luck potion is hard to make, refilling charms are clearly a thing that exist. It seems very simple to just keep one container of it and charm the container to auto refill whenever it gets diminished.